We are live on a Wednesday. It's the 12th of February. Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens lunch hour live stream. I'm Bobby Trossett, as always, joined alongside Sarah Ellison. Jam-packed one today. It's day 3 of the offseason, and thanks to my partner's guest booking abilities, Emmanuel Acho will be joining us in under 45 minutes, around 12:45 Eastern. So he is an NFL MVP voter. He is someone who went with Josh Allen, as we all know, and had a lot to say about it last week. And Sarah and Emmanuel have had plenty of Twitter interaction in recent months, and we're finally going to have a chance to go face-to-face, some good-spirited debate coming up a little bit later on. I'm going to do what I do best and kind of just clear the floor, introduce him, allow you two to kind of enjoy the spirit of debate, which I know you thrive under. So we're looking forward to that in about 40 minutes time or so. We will begin with a player that reportedly has been linked, at least from a perceived fit standpoint, to the Ravens, and that is Deebo Samuel, who appears to be on his way out of the San Francisco 49ers. We'll share with you what Adam Schefter had to say on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week. We'll also discuss the fit of that and whether or not, given what took place this past weekend, maybe is Patrick Mahomes deserving of Lamar Jackson treatment. Kyle Van Noy also went on the facility during his time in New Orleans last week, had some interesting things to say about his current contract situation in Baltimore. I'm sure I've missed a couple of different things, but we've got a lot coming up. It's great to see you. I know you're fired up for this episode.
I'm definitely fired up. I'm just smiling because I'm reading the chat. I see everybody being like, okay, let's try to be respectful while Acho's here. And so my definition of respectful is just no personal attacks, but I will go hard when it comes to debating the issues. And I made sure that I know Deebo's coming up. I made sure that Acho knew what this was about. So a lot of times we have on guests and we're just like, hey, can you come on? And they didn't have any previous interaction with us. And so when you have on guests, you usually just ask them questions and let their answers stand, right? But with Acho, I said, hey, I don't want to ambush you. Like, you're cool with me pushing back and doing a little debate, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, for sure. That's fine. So he's ready for that. And listen, some people are excited about this episode. Some others not, because they feel like Acho has been hard on Lamar. And here's my reason why I was like, for sure we're having him on. He's an MVP voter. There's only 50 of them. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who cover the NFL. When you think about the traditional platforms, the team, their platforms where they cover the team, you talk about independent podcasters, you talk about people just on Twitter or on Instagram or on TikTok. Like, it's just, there's thousands of people that cover the NFL. And Emmanuel Acho is only one of 50 people who get a vote. And then on top of it, this was such a unique year in terms of voting, Bobby, where 7 people flipped, where they gave Lamar Jackson the All-Pro and then flipped on the MVP and gave it to Josh Allen. This could be like a historical moment. Is it going to be a blip on the radar where suddenly MVP definition has changed? Or is it going to be the first year where it's changed forever? And so why would you not want somebody who's in rare air of just getting a vote and then on top of it flipped in terms of All-Pro to MVP, which hasn't happened since the 1980s? So yeah, we would like to have him on because I want to change his mind. I'm going to be respectful. I'm not going to dunk on him, but I'll be passionate and I want to change his mind. I don't know if I will, but I'm going to give it my all.
Well, maybe our loyal subscriber base too will consider this, that this is a dude this is a national personality who's got nearly 500,000 followers on Twitter and has a clear voice in the NFL as a former player. So if nothing else, maybe you'll appreciate the opportunity for the podcast, and obviously goes without saying, your guest booking stays elite. So well done. We look forward to having him on, and it's coming up around 12:45 or so. But we'll begin with the Deebo Samuel conversation, which probably was lost in the shuffle of last week for us, just based on it really at the time not being anything Baltimore-esque, and we were dealing with the aftermath of the MVP and NFL honors and whatnot. And of course, I was on Radio Row, so I remember seeing this tweet, but I didn't remember thinking much of it. Well, that's changed after Adam Schefter's comments, which we'll play for you in just a second. But the news, just in case you missed it last week, is that the 49ers granted Deebo and his agent permission to find a trade partner. It comes after Deebo asked San Francisco to trade him during the players' exit meetings after the season. And as Schefter went on to quote here, it was a hard conversation to have with Kyle because of the relationship that we have. That's what Deebo told Schefter. But I have to do what's best. I'm more than thankful for the Niners giving me the opportunity of a lifetime. But now I think it's best that we find another team. Now, those of you who have been following this story, maybe you aren't surprised. You got to go back to, 2022 when the Ravens were linked to him after he requested a trade. That was back in 2022, but that ultimately turned out pretty well for Deebo. He went on to sign a 3-year, $71.5 million contract extension to stick around. And that, of course, was coming off a tremendous 2021 season, Sarah. He went off over 1,700 yards from scrimmage, 14 touchdowns, and helped San Francisco get to the Super Bowl that year. Since then, it's notable, and we'll get into the numbers in just a second, much like Cooper Kupp, who we discussed last week, he's fallen off production-wise and dealt with plenty of injuries since those 2021 campaigns where both of those guys, respectively, were elite. Here's Schefter's comments on how the Ravens ended up becoming part of this conversation and why we chose to lead with it today on our live stream.
Yesterday morning. So
of course
we didn't go over to the teams just yet. I would think that there'd be a lot of teams that could use a player like Deebo. Obviously, I think the 49ers did a tremendous job at maximizing his talents, but think of all the teams that need wide receivers. There's so many of them, and there's still going to be so much wide receiver movement this offseason that I don't know, like what happens if T. Higgins leaves Cincinnati? Would he be an option there? What if Tyreek Hill gets traded from Miami? Is he an option there? What about
he's back. He's all in, isn't he? I thought Tyreek was all in. Didn't he say he took back his I'm out and his mom called him or something like that?
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, what'd he say?
He says a lot.
I'm just saying there are a lot of outstanding. There are a lot of outstanding wide receivers.
Well said.
I think it's hard to pinpoint right now where Deebo would go. I could see him in Pittsburgh. I could see him in Baltimore. I could see him in a lot of places.
Denver.
Like any of those
Vegas.
any of those AFC North teams makes sense.
Okay, so you heard him there. I think it's hard to pinpoint right now where Deebo would go. I could see him in Pittsburgh. I could see him in Baltimore. I could see him in a lot of places. Any of those AFC North teams make sense. So that's where we stand, Sarah. He just turned 29. He's a former All-Pro. He's due over $17 million in what is the final year of a 3-season extension he signed back in 2022 that I just referenced. But again, the production has dropped off. But I guess that's what makes this somewhat intriguing to me, is that because of what you just heard Schefter say and what we know is going to be a robust market, whether it's through free agency or via the trade market this upcoming offseason at the wide receiver position, perhaps the Ravens would be interested in at least being involved in this, because you can get a player who maybe is taking a back seat to some other big names this offseason that could really help you out significantly within Todd Monken's offense. And you, my friend, are muted.
And of course I did. I just had people, they were working at our house, appreciate them, and they just left. So I had it muted while there was like loud things going on behind here. So first of all, with Adam Schefter, oftentimes when Adam Schefter names teams, we're so used to Adam Schefter being the news breaker that automatically we think, oh, there's something behind this. Either a team has told him this or an agent has told him this. And the way he said that on the Pat McAfee show, he for sure to me sounded like he said, I could see this team, that team, this team. So he took off in that moment his reporting hat and put on his kind of analysis slash just pontificating hat, which is what you and I do for the vast majority of the show every day. So It's not like a lot of times, and here's another thing, Bobby, is because a lot of his information come from agents, some of it from teams, but a lot of it from agents. What agents will often have him do is like, ooh, you know what? So-and-so, I talked to Eric DeCosta. Now, Eric DeCosta may not have shown very much interest, but then they can take that and say, Ravens have showed interest by a simple phone call, which may not be a whole lot of interest. He didn't even say that. Okay. This was Adam Schefter just saying, I could see this person there, this or there. So there wasn't any real reporting going on there. Number two, in terms of Deebo Samuel to the Ravens, I have this question for you, Bobby. Can he hit opposing quarterbacks?
He's not exactly what you're looking for. Huh? He's not going to rebuild your trenches, but he will make your offense more explosive. I know that. Yes. But okay. A lot of these guys that we bring on, whether there's some sort of link from an Adam Schefter or elsewhere, we discuss, is he a good fit? You feel like he'd be a good fit here, both football wise and financially? Well, the financial side of things would be something that the Ravens would have to figure out. So compensation wise, the research that I did from looking at a couple different beat reporters, engaging their projections for what San Francisco might be receptive to, would be a day 3 draft pick and maybe another late round pick. That would satisfy the 49ers. Would that satisfy the Ravens, who covet those types of picks? Don't know. But they have 11 of them, as we know. And then I mentioned let me get the number again. So he's due a $15.4 million option bonus on March 22nd. If they trade him before June 1, they would absorb a $31+ million dead money hit on the salary cap with San Francisco. And then the number that I shared at the top was he carries a $15.87 million cap charge.
Yeah.
And
none of that matters. If the Ravens were going to trade for him, they would get a new deal.
A completely new deal.
Yeah.
So it would come down to that, and it would obviously come down to but I guess why I'm so receptive to it is because of all these big name wide receivers that are out there. Will Deebo sort of be lost in the shuffle, and would the Ravens be able to come in through the shadows and find a way to get him, being that he has declined since 2021 for a lot cheaper than they would have gotten him back in 2022 when they were quote unquote linked to him when he requested for a trade back then?
For sure. He would for sure be a lot cheaper. He's 2 years older. He's been less productive. He's had like some injuries here or there, but nothing that has like really taken him out for long periods of seasons. But those nagging injuries, it seems like when I went through the list, there were a lot of soft tissue kind of injuries coming in there. Those types of things.
I have them right here. You ready for them?
Uh-huh.
Calf, wrist, oblique, rib, and an illness last year that cost him 2 games.
That was just last year.
Lingered. That was just last year. So
and
it was one of his worst.
Again, how many games did he miss?
Well, it was one of his worst statistical seasons. He finished with just over 800 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns. And I'll get you the game amount right now.
Okay. Well, anyway, nothing that's really, I don't think you're gonna confirm that here in a second. I don't think he's missed a ton of games, but those nagging little things turn into more the older you get. So,
and you are correct with that. 15 games played, 15 games started. You got to go back to 2020 where he was really banged up, where he played in just 7.
Yeah, so he's been available. But again, those things could mount into something more. Okay, listen. If you added Deebo Samuel to this offense, would he make it better? The answer is obviously yes, especially if he came in understanding that he's wide receiver 3-ish, right? The Ravens have limited resources, and they're likely going to put those resources to the offensive and defensive lines. Now, they obviously need a wide receiver 3, and maybe it could be somebody that's already on the roster that can be promoted after another year of experience. So if Deebo understands that he'd be wide receiver 3, okay, now we're talking. But if he understands he's wide receiver 3, then he also needs to take a deal that is wide receiver 3, because we can bring up the numbers of his current contract, but if you're doing a trade and he's got 1 year left, you're not trading for somebody for a 1-year deal. You're not doing that. So the Ravens are going to want a new deal. And if the Ravens do a new deal, do you imagine they're going to give him more money than what Rashad Bateman's making right now?
Well, he'd be worthy of more than Bateman. But would they? No.
Right, which is why I already am like, I don't know that they're going to do this. Let me look. Yeah, Bateman, we know they got a steal of a deal, which is why it would be hard to do more or find somebody who's willing to take less. But Bateman is an average salary of $6.5 million. That's almost unheard of for a wide receiver too. That's not on a rookie contract.
Throw that up there against his peers, and you're not going to find anybody with that production that he put forth last year anywhere near him.
Right. And
he ended up becoming the bargain of all bargains last year.
And not that this should stop EDC, but it's just like another element of it. How much do you, how upset do you think Bateman would be after putting up nearly double-digit touchdowns, and somebody else comes in and he's getting paid more? So I guess my point is, and that's not the only reason not to do it, is I just think that the Ravens have limited resources. The priorities are elsewhere. While Deebo Samuel would be a much better deal than he would have been a couple years ago, he's also not really you heard Eric DeCosta say it from the Super Bowl. He said that they really haven't hit on an X wide receiver. Deebo Samuel is more of that chess piece, which obviously they're two completely different molds, body type. But Zay Flowers is kind of that chess piece. You know what I mean? They're different types of chess pieces for sure, but they're used in a variety of ways. So to me, it's like you're looking for a wide receiver 3. I don't know that Deebo Samuel wants that job. You don't necessarily want to pay him more than wide receiver 3, especially with the limited resources that you have. You kind of already have a chess piece. Go out and find your X wide receiver who's willing to be a wide receiver 3, is I guess what I'm saying.
We did cover those comments from Eric last week when he was on with McShay. Then I had Dennis Pitta on the day or so afterwards, and I asked him point blank, is that the missing piece? And this is what you picked up on in that interview. He looked me right in no, they don't need an X receiver. So that will continue to be a debate, Sarah, within these parts. I've certainly come around.
Wait, remind me, who was that again? Who said no to you? Oh, Dennis Pitta.
I asked Dennis, I said, hey, there's a lot of conversation over the years that Lamar has never had a true X at his disposal in this offense, whether it's with Greg at play caller or Todd. Do you feel like that is the missing link? Would that put this over the edge? And I couldn't even get the answer. I couldn't even get the question out.
Yeah.
And he said no, confidently.
Right. Now I did listen to that, and I felt like kind of the context to it is like what Dennis is trying to say is that the Ravens in 2024 had all the pieces. Like, I think what he was trying to say was like, that's not the reason why they didn't win the Super Bowl.
I got you.
You know what I mean? So, I'm sure he's not against having an X wide receiver in the Ravens offense. But to me, with the whole context of what you guys were talking about and how he was saying it was a Super Bowl caliber roster, they weren't missing any major pieces. And Bobby, if they were, I would agree with Dennis. If we're going to say that the Ravens were missing a piece, it was that game wrecker on defense.
The game wrecker on defense, and what they didn't get was turnovers. And that's exactly what that's how Philadelphia won. They not only completely disrupted Patrick Mahomes, his timing, his rhythm, the cadence, everything, but they turned him over. And in big do or die games, the Ravens have not become explosive defensively when it comes to shifting the game around with turnovers. So that's our Deebo Samuel conversation.
Just to put a bow on it, though, just real quick, just to be clear. I'm saying I don't even know that Eric DeCosta needs to look in on it. That's not true. Look in on it and see if he could go for a 6th rounder, right? Like if you get a 6th rounder, and if there's not a lot of interest, maybe you go ahead. But you know what I mean? Like, generally speaking, I'm not so interested. I'm like, ooh, I got to give San Fran a call. You are, though. Correct? You would give him
only because of what I mentioned a couple times now, and that is I think that Deebo's market could be really chill.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so with with what's expected to be a really robust market outside of him at his position over the coming weeks, do the Ravens kind of like, slide in here through the shadows in savvy mode, and Eric puts on his negotiating hat and only has to give up a day 3 pick, and then you figure out the contract.
What would you be willing to give? Because you want to make the phone call. What are you willing to give in draft assets? Ravens do have a lot. They have 11.
On day 3, I have to look what they have on day 3, but I'm sure they have a 6th rounder.
Okay.
If that does it, let's do it. You got to figure out the contract situation.
And would you pay him more than Bateman? At 6.5 mil per year?
I mean, his track record warrants north of that. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. And I know we've already mentioned the statistics since 2021. He's fallen off, but who's to say that he wouldn't resurrect his career in Baltimore, just like every other player that plays with Lamar?
Sure.
I'm not saying they need his running abilities, right? He's sort of a unicorn. He's been a unicorn throughout his career. He's been a wide receiver running back threat. I'm not saying they necessarily need that. You've got a great complement in Justice Hill. But man, the turning away a talent like Deebo, I think would be crazy within this offense. So
it is kind of crazy that like Deebo, Cooper Kupp, Myles Garrett are all guys that like might be available. It's some big names. And Myles is in a different position than the other two. They all haven't completely fallen off, but they're also not in their prime. And so with all these names out there, would the Ravens get, try for one? We'll see.
And just to finish that thought of what you were asking me about.
Sure.
Of course, I think there's bigger priorities. We've kind of made that clear throughout this week. Trenches. Philadelphia laid out the blueprint for how you're going to beat Kansas City and anybody else that wants to emulate what the Chiefs have done in the near future. I'm just saying it's intriguing to me given what we've laid out about what the market's expected to be in the coming weeks.
Let me ask you this. Sorry, I know we keep saying we're going to close this. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the Ravens could have one of those 3 that we just named, we both take Myles Garrett, right? But okay.
Yeah.
What would you, if the Ravens could have one, say, I don't know, somewhere in the same ballpark of price, would you take Deebo or Cooper?
Deebo.
Okay.
I'd go with Deebo. And I think while both have fallen off production-wise since their stellar 2021 seasons, Deebo, like I said, he had over 1,700 yards from scrimmage. Cooper went for the Triple Crown that season. He went on to win the Super Bowl MVP. I think he's been more banged up, and that gives me more pause than what we've seen from Deebo. Because to your point, you had me go back and look at the stats. Really, since 2020, he hasn't had a season where, sure, availability was not what he wanted last year, but it didn't seem like it's derailed him the way that it has for Cooper the last several seasons. So
I get that logic. The chat, we got a Cooper. We got somebody else saying, we'll get a pass rusher then and talk about him for 20 minutes and not a possible wide receiver 3. I promise you, we talked a lot about pass rushers. We had a very, very long, we had like 2 or 3 shows talking about Myles Garrett. I promise you that.
I wonder if
we're going off the news. And Schefter just said that yesterday. So anyway, Cooper. Adam says neither. Deebo, Cooper, and it's not even close from Evan. Deebo, Cooper. Oh my goodness.
You know what it might be? I wonder if people are steering away from Deebo because of some of the antics. He can be a little bit of an antics guy. And hey, that's something that the Ravens are going to have to measure. They didn't, which is why
I wonder if Deebo would want the role that's available in Baltimore.
And that's very fair.
Yeah.
I haven't necessarily been looking at that from a cultural standpoint.
He hasn't seemed super happy taking the back seat in San Fran.
Most
people wouldn't, but I'm saying it in a nice way.
And it's been it's been jammed for him. I mean, think about how we got to this point. They went ahead and drafted Ricky Pearsall right after the Ravens last year, wide receiver. And then they went and gave contract extensions to Ayuk and Jennings. So I can imagine he's been disgruntled for a while now. But I get that. Some might be alluding to that in the chat. I get that. Cooper is more of a level-headed dude, hasn't caused as many headaches. But then again, I've been looking at this solely based on talent and also track record for the Ravens, that aside from Deontay Johnson, they've had a lot of guys come to Baltimore, Odell included, which I was wrong on, and they weren't headaches. They weren't what they were at other stops. So I just think that's relevant. And there you have it, the Deebo Samuel conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to, before we continue, and we're about 10 minutes away, by the way, if you're not already aware of our conversation with Emmanuel Acho just on deck. But before we get there, this episode is brought to you by one of our more long-standing brand sponsors, and that is our friends at Manta Sleep. And at Manta Sleep, these sleep masks give you a number of different things, including a true 100% blackout for a deeper sleep. You've got C-shaped eye cups for unbeatable side sleep comfort if you prefer. Got zero pressure applied to your eyelids or lashes, and advanced materials are built in, which give you ventilation for unmatched breathability. Sarah and I, we tell you all the time about how our families rock these. I know I have the Manta Sleep Mask Pro. Your son has the Sound Mask with the built-in Bluetooth feature. You've got the Silk and the Sleep Mask, which are sort of the OG options for you. And I continue to be intrigued. I might as well just pull the trigger since it's off season, and I want to
do it.
I want to sleep well, because honestly, this morning we had like 3 or 4, I don't know how many inches we got, maybe 2 or 3 inches, a dusting for what I'm used to back home. But we did have some snow today, and there were a bunch of shoveling going on early for people that were up. And I slept in, and I was like, man, these guys are waking me up around 7, and I wanted to sleep a little bit more. And I couldn't help but think, maybe if I had that Manta white noise machine, would I just be completely drowned out by all of that? So anyway, I'm looking into it. Point is, there's a lot more that Manta has to offer than just sleep masks. And if you find something you like at checkout, use our discount code. It's VAULT10, VAULT10. That'll get you 10% off your next purchase. And we want to continue to say thank you to Manta for all the support. You can learn more by visiting our show notes or the pinned comment that we have right now in the live chat. And with that, let's get to some super chats.
Yeah, and Bobby, call me crazy, but Manta has been so supportive of us. Something tells me if you shot an email over to them, they could send you a noise machine for your reviews here on the show.
I was thinking about that too,
right?
Honestly.
That done.
I was thinking about that.
Hat.
And I just forgot about this. They sent us, because when we were in our postseason mode, not knowing how the Ravens, how long they would go, we have a giveaway to do. We have a sleep mask giveaway that I totally forgot to tell you about. I received it, I believe, when I was in New Orleans. So we have to figure out what day we want to do that, how we want to do that, and
which sleep mask?
Haven't even opened it up. Still in a package. So we'll get back to you.
Okay.
All right. Chimsy says, do not forget to bring up how Josh was carried in multiple games, especially against the Texans, Patriots, and Colts.
Wait. Yeah, that's a good idea, because I had where Lamar. Let me take some notes from chat.
Okay.
This is important, okay? Let's keep this chat up. Where are my notes for him? Okay, here we go. So, because I have the slide coming that talks about when Lamar played below an MVP level, the Ravens were 0-5. And when he played at MVP level, they were 11-0. Whereas Josh Allen was like 2-2 or something. I have it in the slide. But he was carried. Oh, the Texans. And remember, D'Amico Ryans. Texans, Pats, and Colts. I got to look up his stats on that. Was he below like 200? Did he have interceptions? Come back to me on that, Chimsy.
Appreciate you. Big Arms Fishing showing us some love. And that brings us to Kobe Pruitt.
Everybody's got Acho questions.
Oh, yeah.
Kobe Pruitt. Ask Acho why Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and Edgerrin James weren't held against Peyton in MVP voting. Lamar's the only person that's been punished. Yeah, no, there's him. There's Steve Young and Jerry Rice. There's Kurt Warner and the greatest show on turf. Like there's Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. It goes on and on and on. Good one, Kobe.
Queon, ask Acho why Lamar getting Derrick Henry was such a big deal when they wanted to give Brock Purdy the MVP in 23 when he had McCaffrey, Kittle, Deebo, and Ayuk.
I don't know what Acho specifically wanted to do, because when we say they, I can't pin all MVP voters on Acho, so I don't know what Acho wanted to do.
we're assuming
And I'm
that
pretty sure he voted for Lamar last year because I know he did because
he did.
only Aaron Schatz voted against him.
He did, and his deciding factor, as we all remember, was the San Francisco final act on Christmas night.
Mm-hmm.
Edwin Rice.
2 years ago, I was a big fan of us getting Deebo. Now, I'd prefer us to bolster the D-line and or O-line. How about both? But Deebo could be a good third wide receiver, but at what cost?
Yep, that's what we were kind of just discussing. Appreciate you, Edwin. Asmodeus says you would have to sell him on chasing a ring. He also says, can we use Deebo as a kick/punt returner? Look, he's got a lot of different assets, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if he'd be willing to or be interested in doing so, but he's an intriguing player. While he can be a headache, but he's an intriguing player. Lauren Wunderlich.
Not football related. Come take a free pickleball lesson with me at the Bounce Baltimore in Pikesville. Maybe you'll meet your future wife on the court. Hey, if I come back to Baltimore, I would love to go play pickleball with you guys. I love pickleball.
Lauren is always looking out for me along the lines of playing matchmaking. So appreciate you, Lauren. Truth Bearer says, bring up how Acho had Purdy as his MVP before Christmas last year and said he didn't care about hypotheticals of others supporting casts.
Oh, did he really, Truth Bearer? Look at Truth with the receipts. Truth, you're 100% on that. I don't want to bring that up and then him be like, no, I never said that.
I was going to say, Sarah, you're taking a gamble. We love Truth, but
maybe I just ask him where he had Purdy before that Christmas game.
For sure.
If it comes up.
And we are fully caught up to speed on Super Chats and about 5 minutes out from Emmanuel joining the show. How do we want to handle content prior to him arriving?
Should we just do KVN?
Let's just do KVN.
All right.
So,
and he was in the facility. So when Emmanuel comes in, he'll see that we've got his show on there.
I was going to say, we're promoting the facility in Fox Sports and our guest awfully hard today. And so, basically, last week, the facility had a presence, much like most national shows did, in New Orleans.
Truth just added me on it, by the way. He's got
Perfect.
me.
For Super Bowl 59. And Kyle Van Noy, coming off his career year with 12.5 sacks in Baltimore, one-upping himself from the previous year, which was also a career high in sacks. He joined the facility, and Emmanuel asked him this question about his current contract situation in Baltimore. I think you'll appreciate the answer.
Hey, speaking of handling things, I'm not good at math, 2-5. I'm not good at math.
Are you sure?
I'm not.
Especially at Texas, they don't do math at Texas, but they do football at Texas.
But this, you got 12.5 sacks this year.
Yeah.
But you only signed a $9 million deal.
No guaranteed money?
So that don't add up to me. So like, that sounds like a holdout to me. Like, are you stepping back on the field until you get your paper? What we doing here?
Like I said, I'm a pro. You know, EDC, we'll have a conversation, but I'm going to handle business how business needs to be handled. I'm going to show up. I don't need to be a distraction. I think they'll do right. They've done right by me since I've been there. I have nothing but respect for the organization. Mr. Bouchatti, the owner, first class from top down. And so I'm going to be first class to them. They deserve it. And so that's how always.
Listen. You need some good guys. Yeah. You need some bad guys. I'm going to get you that money for you.
KVN, Sarah, on the facility last week. So remember, 12.5 sacks this past season, 9 the previous. Prior to those 2 years in Baltimore, he had spent his career elsewhere, whether it was New England, where he became a 2-time Super Bowl champ, whether it was Detroit, whether it was the Chargers for a season, whether it was Miami for a season. His previous high was 6.5, and you got to go back to 2019. So not only has he been a key piece for Baltimore as a pass rusher and as a locker room guy and as a leader, but he has completely resurrected his career. And much like you spoke with him about last year in terms of potential conversations that he might be having, given his production with the front office, perhaps there's another conversation to be had. But the best part about it, I think, from a fandom perspective, what a breath of fresh air. He doesn't want to be a distraction. He's showing up. He'll handle his business when it needs to be handled. Refreshing there from the vet.
Yeah, no, definitely refreshing. He actually sounded very similar to Derrick Henry and the clips that we showed on Derrick yesterday when he was on the edge with Micah Parsons. Both of them was like, we want to finish our careers in Baltimore, right? Derrick Henry didn't get too deep into like what he's looking for. He just said, your boy may be getting something going, something along those lines. And he said that he wanted to finish in Baltimore because it's a first-class organization. And this is what the Baltimore culture gets you. You constantly have veterans that when they pass through, they do not want to leave. They want to continue playing. So that's definitely nice to hear. It's funny because KVN, when I talked to him last year, had kind of like was looking for a little bit of a pay bump, right? But he was at the end of that contract and he got a little bit of a pay bump, but with 12 sacks, it's probably worth more than the 4.5 million average that he got. So he's looking for a little bit of a bump up. Derrick Henry's looking for a little bit of bump up. And before you know it, everybody that played well is going to be looking for that. So that will be between him and Eric DeCosta, unless either one of them wants to kind of reveal, any more about the process. But it looks like both sides are going to be pretty quiet. But Cole Jackson here kind of put out the 2024 edge rusher stat rankings for the Ravens. And Kyle Van Noy had 413 pass rush snaps. And by the way, one of the reasons why his career has been resurgent in terms of the sacks total, it's because the Ravens are letting him play that role. In the past, he's been more of a Sam, kind of drop back or maybe be all around. But now he's just been able to get after the quarterback. So when you have more opportunities, you're going to be rewarded, or he's rewarding them with more sacks. So 413 pass rush snaps. 13 sacks is what Cole has here. Odafe Owe, 452 snaps, which is 18th most in the league, and 10 sacks, which is 15th. David Ojabo, 181 snaps, which is the 100th most, with just 2 sacks. And then Tavius Robinson had 257 snaps, 75th in league, with 4 sacks. So he asks at the end, what stands out to you? And he later answered his own question, is he felt like, while the numbers were there, the Ravens overall had the second most sacks in the league, the efficiency isn't as much there. And so that's why people are calling for a game record. Again, I feel like this is a solid foundation. The Ravens, again, got a lot of sacks throughout the year, but it is missing that guy that it's like you don't have to scheme this up, right? This isn't like 4-man rushes like we saw with the Eagles. This is disguises. This is, it's not always just, hey, I'm just going to beat my man straight up. So that game record is still needed.
Oh, is it ever? And it is desperately needed. Let's hope it comes in one form or fashion, whether they keep taking swings in the draft or potentially make a move in free agency, which would be relatively uncharacteristic of the Ravens. I know you're on record for saying that you expect it to be relatively of a straightforward offseason when it comes to spending, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it will be in terms of they're just not going to have a lot in free agency. Yeah. But they're going to have to do, the Ravens are definitely going to have to do, and we've talked about this before. They're going to have to do some extensions because there aren't a lot of cap candidates. So the Ravens are going to have to do some extensions to open up some cap space. And then there's just not a lot of, cutting candidates. And we'll go over that probably later in this week. So, but KVN getting more money was not on the bingo card. I don't know that that's going to help open up more money. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, our featured guest just popped up into the waiting room. And as promised, a former NFL linebacker who was drafted by the Cleveland Browns in the 6th round of the 2012 draft joins us. It's Emmanuel Acho. He's a Texas Longhorn. You might remember him from his time in college football from 2008 to 2011. He's also transformed himself into an Emmy Award-winning broadcaster. He's an analyst and host for The Facility on Fox Sports. And Sarah, I know you know this. He even hosted The Bachelor.
I watched The Bachelor. Oh, yeah. I always have the ladies' night for The Bachelor.
Yes. And, of course, last but not least, he's also an NFL MVP voter, which is exactly why you wanted to bring him on today. Here he is, Emmanuel Acho, ladies and gentlemen.
Coming on for Bachelor Talk, actually. Yeah, I didn't realize. Apologies for the tardiness. Literally just got home from set. But good to see y'all. Good to see y'all.
Yeah, no, I knew you were running over from set because you said you want me to have a nice setup or you want me to come from the iPhone. I was like, we'll give you to 12:45 then if we can get, Emmanuel looking his best. And how's the voice? I know that you lost it there for a minute. You sent me that voice memo and I was like, dang, he does not sound good.
I'm at about 70%, but it's good. I mean, the season for us, like I assume for y'all, like I know for the athletes, it's a grind. No days off, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. Cap it with the Super Bowl. It was on our network, so it was a grind. But all is good. Good to be here. Good to talk a little MVP, a little bit of everything.
It's so good because you and I have interacted so much on Twitter. Obviously, more often disagreeing than agreeing. But this is why I respect you. Is like I try to keep it just about the conversation, nothing personal. And I'm still blocked by other people when I'm not trolling. I'm just having that conversation. The fact that you're here today, I respect because I know Ravens have been all over you much more than even Bills fans have been all over me. I'm telling you, they're both mad at opposite people here. So I figured we got to get together and, talk this through face to face, representing both sides. So I appreciate you coming on because I know it's not the friendliest environment, especially I don't know if you're watching chat. So
of course
they've already said, let's try to behave ourselves here. So we're hoping.
And we've seen your DMs too. We saw the screenshots you put up there. My goodness.
It's interesting. So Bobby, the head of the AP did not notify us that our votes would be public. Now, I stand behind everything I say and everything I do, and I vote accordingly. But I know there were some other voters that were like, yo, I didn't know my votes were going to be public. I always assumed there's a world in which it could. But I literally texted the head of the AP and I said, yo, bro, you might want to give us a heads up next time. Again, I said, I can handle it. It's all good. But other people probably can't handle strangers telling them, I hope you kill yourself. I hope you die. You're a coon. You're dancing. Like, other people might not be accustomed to handling that. Obviously, Sarah, we're talking about a game here.
Yeah.
Now, a game has major implications. I do not know about the escalators in Lamar's contract, but I think Josh Allen got like a $1.5 million bonus for winning MVP. So though it is just a game, I use a lot of sincerity in my voice when I say like, it's a game, but there are major implications for voters and the way in which we vote. And I do take that with the utmost level of seriousness.
Yeah, we do. We know you do. So let's start with this, Emmanuel. And I think the biggest shock for not just Ravens fans, but I think it was the NFL world, was the fact that 30 voters voted for Lamar Jackson for the All-Pro. And so after that came out, it was like, oh, this probably means, this is a shoo-in for Lamar to win MVP. Yeah. You were one of, I think, 7 voters who kind of flipped that once the MVP vote came around. And then you voted for Josh Allen for MVP. Can you explain to the viewers why you flipped that? Because it's not just Baltimore. It was NFL wide that was shocking.
Yeah, it was shocking because it was atypical, because there is what I would suggest a new authority in town. Let me try to educate this for those that are willing to listen. I became a voter 2 years ago. I voted for Lamar Jackson for MVP last year. Number 1, I voted Josh Allen, number 2 last year. The head of the AP, I believe, took over 3 years ago. And since then, Sarah, it has now been directed and it has been made abundantly clear. All-Pro is for the person who had the best overall season. MVP is for the individual who had the most valuable season. Now, in the previous years of voting, I do not think that has been clarified. I also cannot speak to anybody who has voted outside of myself the last 2 years. So I believe that we have been trained into thinking whoever is All-Pro will be MVP, because that's the way it has historically gone based upon the governing bodies historically over the AP ballots, etc. But the new governing body has made it abundantly clear that the 2 awards, they are separate and completely different entities. Let me offer another example. Last year, Joe Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year. It was told to us this year for clarity, Comeback Player of the Year award should not be given to somebody who came back from being sorry. It should be given to somebody who came back from being injured. Hence why Joe Burrow won it this year. Joe Flacco didn't come back from nothing last year. He just came back from the couch. He never should have won it. So it was clarified to us. So it is very shocking both to analysts, to fans, to opinionists alike, because the way in which the votes occurred this year has been changed because it's a new governing body, if you will. I voted Lamar for first team All-Pro. I believe I voted Joe Burrow for second team All-Pro because their seasons were better. Statistically, they were better than Josh Allen's. But that word better versus value to me is not semantics. That word has meaning. Again, for those that don't know, I'm a word snob. I've written 4 books in 4 years. I like words. And so better and value, they just mean different things to me. Last thing I'll say is this. If you think Lamar Jackson is more valuable, you have every right to do so. Just make sure you think he is more valuable, not that you think he's better. Not you, Sarah, the proverbial you.
Yeah, no, well, that's interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of different directions we could go. First of all, it seemed to me that many voters, they can say it's most valuable, but to most voters, it still meant best.
Yeah.
It still meant best. I mean, Tom Brady still picked him. You heard the, when ESPN was arguing about it with Dominic Foxworth and Dan Orlovsky, because he took the same view as you. And they think it's semantics. And so I would say the AP, or, I mean, you're putting it on the AP with definitions. So I would put it on them if that's what they did. I also put it on those that kind of flip. To me, this is a situation where we're overthinking the words. Like, it's like, if you look back on history, that's clearly what people have been voting on. And it's clearly has an impact on the Hall of Fame and the legacies that people get. And so whether it's you as a voter or Dan Orlovsky as a voter or the others that changed it or the AP saying it, like, we've just gotten too cute. To me, it's the equivalent of the Philadelphia Eagles get to the 1, and instead of doing the tush push, they try to throw a pass. Like, what are we doing here? Take the tush push. It's right there. We all know that's the best way to score. You're like overthinking the situation. And that's what I think has happened here.
Let me ask you a question, though,
Mm-hmm.
because I would suggest, are we overthinking it or are we thinking about it accurately? What I mean is, like, just because people have done it wrong before, does that mean that you, Sarah, should do it wrong? Or say it was right before, but now it's been clarified that we're changing it. Should we not adjust with the times? Laws change every single day. We used to not wear seatbelts. Now you do wear seatbelts. Laws in the NFL change. Used to not be able to hit a receiver defensively, or you used to be able to hit them. Now you can't. So all governing bodies and governances are always changing. Again, I can't speak to anybody who voted prior to 2022. But Sarah, I could not continue in ignorance just because people before me are ignorant. That's just not the way I approach life itself. So I'm not saying that you're right. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying I understand where you're coming from. And, well, this is how it's always been. But if everybody does that, am I supposed to do it even if I know it's wrong just because it's what everybody else does? That's what I would ask you.
Yes. And I think that you should have, no, and here's why. I'm not just saying, I'm saying like you should have pushed back. And here's why. You should change your show, because you guys, just like us, talked every single week about who's MVP. Because you know that historically MVP meant it was the best player and it has an impact on legacy. So every single week, you guys went in and you guys debated who was going to be MVP. You did not debate who was going to be first team All-Pro, and neither did we. Mm-hmm. Because we know the significance of what that is. So if the AP is in here and they're trying to change the definition, okay, then everything that you change needs to follow along with it. It needs to be that now we don't put on a pedestal the MVP, we put on the pedestal the All-Pro. And now we say, oh, this quarterback in this era had 4 All-Pros, and in this quarterback in this era had 4 MVPs, but they're equivalent. Because that is absolutely, it meant best player for decades. And for some governing body to come in and change precedent without telling the whole entire NFL world, rather than some obscure emails or phone calls that are happening backdoor, that doesn't seem to have gotten to all the MVP voters. Yes, I think you should have pushed back, Acho.
Well, here's where I did push back. I pushed back for clarity. I do a lot of homework. I always did a lot of homework. I was never the most talented athlete. I just prided myself in working the hardest and in trying to uplift intelligence. I asked him a couple things. I said, hey, can you split votes? And I asked the head of the AP, can you split votes? Like, could I vote Lamar and Josh as co-ones? And he said, no, you can't vote as co-ones. But if they tie, they can share the award. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, can't do that. Then I also asked, I said, hey, send me the definition of what I'm voting for. So, Sarah, I did push back. My pushback just didn't lend itself in Lamar's favor this year, whereas last year it did. It also didn't lend itself in Lamar's favor for MVP, whereas it did for All-Pro. Obviously, we esteem MVP, to your point, more than we esteem All-Pro. I push back on Comeback Player of the Year. So where I disagree with you or even challenge you is I did push back. I just didn't get the answer that you wanted me to get. But like, I did a lot of homework as it pertains to, hey, clarify this for me. Hey, clarify this for me. Hey, why are we doing this? I asked every question I needed to ask, and then I did my own homework. I did my own research. And that's why I feel very confident in my decision, is because like I posted, like I just went back and watched everything I believe of significance. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. So yeah, there's just the last question I have here. You're saying this new regime came in a couple years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong. I know this because our audience keeps sending me information. It's hard. It's like not just me who's debating you. I promise you, like our audience is trying to send me stuff. But Brock Purdy versus Lamar last year before the Christmas game.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy had Deebo Samuel. He had Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, all that. I mean, incredible supporting cast.
Yeah.
And prior to that game, you said, if he wins this game, I'm going to give it. I mean, Purdy has the lead. That was what your position was at the time. Lamar ended up winning, and he outplayed everybody on that field. So I know why you voted the way you did there. But my question is why didn't this new definition that came in prior to 2023, why didn't that hurt Brock Purdy in your eyes when he had a superb supporting cast?
Last year, I would suggest it did hurt Brock Purdy. I didn't vote Brock Purdy first or second for MVP. I think I may have voted Brock Purdy for like 5th or 4th. I'll go back and check.
Well, going into December 25th, you were ready to, despite the supporting cast.
Because a couple things. Number one, I love the Niners. I watch the Niners because I got friends. D'Amico Ryans, my former teammate, was an old DC. So I just used to be a super fan of the Niners because I'm a fan of my friends. I don't really care for teams. I care for my friends, respectfully. It's a couple things. Number one, the way the Niners offense was rolling and the way they looked and Brock Purdy's numbers along with the record. So had a great cast, all of the things, but he looked great. Like conversely, Jalen Hurts this year, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Great cast, but his numbers were still kind of like, yeah, they don't look all that great. Mm-hmm. Brock Purdy was different. Brock Purdy's numbers were like that. Though his team was like that, his numbers were like that. When Lamar stepped on that field, bro, Lamar embarrassed Fred Warner. When Lamar embarrassed Fred, that's what I said. Yeah. You know what? I said, hey, he MVP. And I love one player in the National Football League. It's Fred Warner. That's the only one I actually.
Hey, he's my guy. He went to BYU. He's my guy. Yeah.
Only one I love. When Lamar embarrassed Fred, that's when I said, you know what? He's different. He's different. It wasn't even about Brock. Brock threw 2 bad picks. I think he threw 5. 3 of them were tipped. The one he threw to Kyle Hamilton, I think it was cover 4 in the end zone. That was like, hey, bad play, Brock. He threw another bad pick. But it was about how good and how valuable Lamar looked in that game. Cut to this year. Lamar did beat Josh head to head. I think it was week 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yep. But when I went back and I watched that game first, remember Derrick Henry, 87 yards to the crib. Now, I'm not punishing him. I'm just using context. Again, I'm a defender. I look at the game defensively. So after Derrick Henry goes 87 yards to the crib, instantly the Buffalo Bills, they completely adjust. Now they go from 2 high, screw this. We shifting down to 1 high. Lamar made 3 special plays in that game. Josh made 2 special plays in that game. I went back, I rewatched the game, plays that I deem as special through the lens of a defender. So though the Ravens beat the brakes off of the Bills, Lamar didn't like run 10,000 laps around Josh. Lamar outplayed Josh, but he didn't like murder Josh, whereas Lamar ran 10,000 laps around Purdy. I mean, every lap that you could run. around Purdy, respectfully. Unfortunately for Brock, I like Brock Purdy. Lamar did that. I also contextualized that it was a lot of things happened after the week 4 or 5 game between the Ravens and the Bills. So it was truly close for me. That word value, though, is where it differed.
So so in your mind, since you got this new thing that it means that it does not mean best, what, in like a simple phrase, what did value mean to you?
Value to me means how dependent is the team on you exclusively for success?
Yeah. So
Mind
this
you,
isn't even something to celebrate anymore then. I can't celebrate that. It's like who's the best player on the worst team with the best record, like nearly a good record. You know what I mean? It's not even like who cares who wins that award then? If that's all it means.
I mean,
for real though, like why should we esteem that if that's the definition?
I think I don't think we'll run into this problem a lot. I don't think we will, because remember, Lamar had a uniquely superb year. Not uniquely, because he was superb in 2019 as well. Lamar had a superb year. Josh did some things that you just don't see happen often. He did some things you don't see it. You truly don't see it. So I also think we are irate over something that won't occur very often. And again,
but that doesn't mean much to Baltimore fans, because 3 MVPs is probably a Hall of Fame lock.
Oh, 2's a Hall of Fame lock. Everybody with 2's a lock too. I mean, Lamar's a Hall of Famer already. He's a lock. Now, that does not mean he should not have won. Like, I got upset when my co-host Chase Daniel, he's not a voter Ravens fan, so relax. When my co-host Chase Daniel was like, yeah, but Lamar already has 2, so I'm sure there's voter fatigue. I said, to hell with that.
Yeah.
I said, to hell with that. Just because he got 2 does not mean he should not win this one. To hell with that. I only looked at this year. I exclusively looked at this year. Josh was just more valuable.
Yeah, again, like if that's the definition, then it's just not to be celebrated. And I would like you to give that, if you would, then my suggestion would be to push back with that. Like, what are we celebrating here then? What are we celebrating if it's not the best player? This is what we do. We want to see who wins. We want to see who has the best outcome. Like, we want to see an obvious winner. We celebrate success. We celebrate not like who has the worst team. And then all season long, and Emmanuel, what was like sick to me is that the 2 fan bases started debating and trashing their quarterback's own teammates, right? And so it's like Cook got cooked by his own fan base to, you know what I mean? To like, and I wasn't going to do that to Derrick Henry, right? And then so like, and then it's like, then you start to like pick and choose based off of hypotheticals with this new nebulous definition, right? So then you're like, okay, well, let's see. Derrick Henry's better than Cook, even though they both had 16 touchdowns, but Derrick Henry had double the yards, and obviously he's a future Hall of Famer, so I'm not going to sit here and trash him. And then you like look over the defense, and every single time, and I know not everybody uses stats, but I think the tape bore this out. Every single time Lamar Jackson played below an MVP level, and this is according to the numbers that Mike Sando, a fellow MVP voter, put together. Every time Lamar Jackson did not play at an MVP level, the Ravens were 0-5. When he played at an MVP level and above, the Ravens were undefeated. The defense did not have his back for 10 weeks of the season. Then they started getting better, but they still weren't like balling out. Justin Tucker single-handedly missed 7 points of field goals in that Eagles game, and the Ravens lost by 5. And so it was like, then I remember you in week 1 had criticized the Ravens. I think it was like week 1 or 2, saying that they didn't have an offensive identity, and they didn't.
No,
they were working through. You criticized, or you didn't criticize, but you projected about how losing a DC was going to hurt. Losing your top pass rusher was going to hurt. Losing your starting Pro Bowl linebacker was going to hurt. Your interceptions leader was going to hurt. But nobody wanted to talk about that all year long. It was only that Josh Allen lost his receiver, which is a big loss. But it's like, then you just start picking and choosing which context you want to bring for this new weird definition.
But here's where I don't push back, because most people who know me, like, I like to listen and learn other people's ideology. I really get that upset. If I do, I'm probably just like trying to make TV. Here's where like I would submit, like, for anybody watching, there's 50 voters, and there's 50 voters with different levels of experience, which I think is a beautiful thing. You could argue that it's not. Some people suggest, man, every voter should only be a Hall of Famer. Y'all do realize most Hall of Famers don't work really hard anymore because they're already Hall of Famers. Like the hardest working people are usually like the backups because like they've always had to work hard. Or most voters should only be coaches. There's some sorry coaches out there. Trust me, I know. Or like, so here's what I say that to say this. I voted based upon my experience as a defender in the NFL, a defender collegiately, a defender that was in the same room as current head coaches, that was on a team led by Tom Coughlin when I was on practice squad, that was on a team led by the Chip Kellys, that was on a team led by, so I vote from a defensive mind. Truth be told, Sarah, I don't really look at a ton of stats because I look at the tape because I that's what I always did. I've never been in a defensive meeting room and my coach said, hey, the EPA of this player is this. I'm not going to undermine it. If that's how you get down, whoever you are, get down like that. But I've never been in a meeting room and a coach said, hey, got to watch out for this quarterback today. His passer rating is 127.9. Nah, my coach turns on tape. So I, as one of 50, turn on tape. I'm not going to chastise the person who can't turn on tape. Like as some voters who I know for certain, they can't tell you the route tree. Some voters, I know for certain they could not drop a cover 4 defense out of a 3-4 or a 4-3. But they vote, and they vote based on stats. So sometimes stats lend you to an answer. Tape lent me to my answer. I will not degrade the person who can't break down tape. I won't, just because that doesn't serve me. Now, I do look kind of funny like, dang, you voting on MVP, but you don't even know if Lamar made the right read on that play. It just worked out. You don't even know if Josh made the right read on them. You don't even know that this was an 80-yard touchdown because it was a busted coverage. You don't even know what coverage they were in to have busted the coverage. So I just know it's a wide variety of voters. I vote from my lens, not saying my lens is right, not saying their lens is wrong, but that's the beauty of having 50 different votes.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that for sure. Like you need to bring I'm sure they selected you and Mike Sando for 2 different reasons so that they could have the diversity of the way of looking at the game. And so, but what I guess I was getting at with those stats, just because it becomes more punchy, and it becomes easier to articulate. But I would guess that when you watch that Eagles game, you see what we saw with the stats. You saw that Justin Tucker blew it. You saw when the Ravens played the Browns that the defense couldn't stop. Who was it during that game? Was it still Deshaun? No, it was Winston. Yeah. They made Winston look like an all-pro again, that he had just like resurrected his career. And then the Ravens all-pro Kyle Hamilton drops the game-winning pick. Mm-hmm. And you go back to the Raiders loss, which everybody was holding against Lamar and Lamar only. You saw what was happening with that offensive line, that they were rotating the rookie in at right tackle, and Daniel Fa'alele, a converted right tackle to right guard, was getting eaten alive by Max Crosby. Like you saw all those things. And so I say the stat because it's easier to communicate, but I know you saw that on film. I know you did.
1,000%. But I went back and I rewatched the Raiders game. And if I'm not mistaken, again, I got to cover 32 teams in several sports. So you probably know better than me. But if I'm not mistaken, there were 3 consecutive possessions where the Ravens, I don't think, not only did they not get points, they may have only gotten 1 first down. I think it was the last, 3 of the last 4 possessions of the game. And that was the difference. Because when you watch tape, unfortunately, you don't get to hear anything. You just see the score flash up, and then you see the score flash up again. And it was 24 to 14, then 24 to 17, then 24 to 24. Then and it was yo, Ravens offense, you got to do something, because every time I'm hitting next, the score is changing. Mm-hmm. And so when I watched that game, that's when I was just dang, Lamar, your defense isn't helping you. But this is one of those positions where it's just go get a first down and stop this nonsense. Just stop the BS, go get a first down and end it. I don't know. I mean, I think it was close. People who think Lamar was the MVP, that I'm not all up in arms, because I'm dude, you're not wrong. You're not.
And to be clear, I can obviously Josh had a sensational season. I just feel like Lamar did stuff that has never been done before. And I think he did it against tougher competition. Yeah.
And I got to go soon just because my voice hurts.
I know you do.
I'm sure y'all got to go too. But doing stuff that's never been done before, this isn't a Lamar thing in general. I don't think that makes you MVP. I think that makes it dope. That makes it super cool.
I think it makes you the best.
Impressive. But I don't think it makes you the MVP. I used to hate Russell Westbrook, I don't know if you're familiar with basketball at all, but like first guy to average a triple-double in a season since Oscar Robinson. Okay. Then he did it again the next year. Okay. Then Sarah, he did it again 2 years later, 3 out of 4 years. Cool. Didn't make him. It made him the MVP once, but just because you did something that's never been done before, I'm like, yo, that's cool. That's incredibly impressive. But like, it doesn't make you the MVP. It makes you the most impressive. It makes you the coolest. It makes you the most unique.
Or the best this year. I mean, come on. When you have the 4th best ever passer rating and you're known to be a dual threat quarterback, when you have the best touchdown to interception ratio in NFL history, that makes you the best.
And that's why.
I just want to hear you say it. Who is the best quarterback?
It was Lamar.
Okay.
But that was obvious by my all-pro vote.
Well, you should have voted for MVP, in my opinion. You should have done it. You should have done it, Acho. I got love for you, but you should have done it. Just like Tom Brady and those other guys who are like, what are you talking about? MVP, best player.
Yeah, I got to run, but this has been good.
Hey, can I ask one before you jump?
Talk to me.
Sorry, Bobby.
Because we haven't talked. No, this was your debate. I just wanted to get your thought on. We haven't talked strength of schedule at all, and I think down the stretch, I want to know how that went into your consideration, if at all, because obviously the AFC East can't hold a candle in recent years, particularly this past season, to the AFC North. And being that Josh's final act was against, teams that didn't make the postseason, whereas, Lamar dismantled the Texans on Christmas Day. You beat Pittsburgh, you beat Cleveland to close out the year. And while Josh won 3 in a row as well, I'm sorry, they actually lost. Josh didn't play in the regular season finale, as you know, against New England. But prior, it was New England and New York. How much did that go into your consideration, if any at all?
It did, but here was the dilemma. I can't punish a guy who's already finished his work early. Like, I can't punish Josh for not playing in week 18. He took a snap and then he chilled, but I'm like, I can't deduct Josh. So Lamar, you're going to have to go retroactively jump what Josh did versus the Detroit Lions. You're going to have to retroactively go jump what Josh did versus the Kansas City Chiefs. You're going to because I'm not going to make Josh worse because he already won the AFC East. So of course it factored in, but the dilemma was that by the time Josh got to the last 3 games of the season, he had beaten the Lions and he had beaten the Chiefs. And so I wasn't going to retroactively deduct Josh for not playing in a Patriots game, because I'm sure he could have played in that last game. Well, let me not say I'm sure, but there's a high likelihood he could have played in the Patriots game and scored 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns, whatever the heck. But I wasn't going to punish him for having already finished his homework early.
Did he take a snap to extend his start streak that day?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So the start streak extended, but then they sat him.
Correct. So then he got a loss, I think, on his record because he started the game, but they didn't win the game. Something stupid. But that's what it was for me, Bobby. It definitely factored in, but it's kind of like I wasn't going to punish him for having already balled. That was just weird. That's weird to me to do that. To me, it's just weird. It's weird.
We appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, Acho, very much so. Again, you're one of those guys, and I say this to the audience all the time. You actually engage rather than give an opinion and run. So I got all the respect in the world for that. I really appreciate your time today. You didn't have to give us the time of day. You're the one with the MVP vote, not us. So I'm sure it's not fun for me to sit here and say, oh, you should have voted this way or that way. I know there's a million people doing that. So much respect. And thank you for letting me get this off my chest to an MVP voter.
For sure. All right, Sarah. All right, Bobby. Y'all be well.
Okay,
yeah, I saw you from afar too in New Orleans. What a city that was. That was awesome.
Epic. All right, people. I'm
gonna appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Yep. See you around. Emmanuel Acho.
Listen,
great get, partner. Great get. Great conversation.
He said what I wanted him to say. Lamar Jackson was the best quarterback, and he should have voted for him. The definitions, the changing last second or whatever, some regime change or whatever, that's a bunch of BS. And otherwise, we need to change what we're looking at and what we're debating on shows, because people care about who's the best, not who's the best on the worst team. You know what I mean? With the worst supporting cast. That can't be it. It can be, listen, I think that type of stuff can be a tiebreaker, maybe, Well, with Lamar dominating in almost every other category, you didn't need a tiebreaker. You didn't need one. You didn't need a tiebreaker. So anyway, much respect to him for sure.
That was a fun debate and great get by you and awesome stuff. And by the way, just to answer the chat, this was the plan all along for me to clear the way, like I said at the top. So
when we got on, I said to Bobby, I said, how do you want to do this? How do you want to do this with Acho? Are we going to like rotate this and that? And he said, no, this is your debate. He said, I'm going to stand aside. So that wasn't me like elbowing Bobby out. Bobby wanted it to be this way. It didn't have to be that way, but he knew that I've been debating Acho online via Twitter. So the plan was for him to kind of like clear the stage. He was going to introduce him. He was going to get one question on his way out, and he was going to let me debate him. That was the plan the entire time.
Yeah, it's not my debate, and I'm not as passionate as you are. But I thought that was great. Really, really appreciate his time. And again, guys, it goes a long way, obviously, for us when we get guests like that. If you would tweet at him, if you would say thanks, if you would just show him some love in his mentions. Similarly to Mike Florio last week, maybe the takeaway is, oh man, not so bad, right? A good spirited conversation, a willing debate participant. So
yeah,
great
and
stuff.
I hope that he walked away. I hope we both walk away feeling like we said what we wanted to say. You know how sometimes you walk away and you're like, I should have said this, should have said that. Like, I feel like I said what I wanted to say, and I'm sure he did too, because he's got practice at this. He's been defending himself online and on his show. So we both probably got our points across. Doesn't sound like either one of us changed the other's mind, but going forward, it's going to be crazy if this like definition isn't like settled for sure.
More to come. The only thing we weren't able to ask for him at the end there was, how do all 50 MVP voters, after a couple of years of him being, having a ballot, how does everybody get on the same page? So that remains to be seen. But let's get to some super chats. Davon Barnes says, I think no on the Deebo discussion because Zay is just like him, but better. We need the trenches upgraded. Also, it's my birthday. Hashtag Voltrons. Happy birthday, Davon. Sensei. Or excuse me, Tinsei.
Calling for new award, Player of the Year and MVQB. Current and former players and coaches should vote for POTY.
Player of the Year.
Because that's what he's saying is Player of the Year. Okay. I'd say Chase, OPTY, Saquon, POTY, and LJ, MVQB.
Wait, okay. So he's got Chase as the offensive player of the year, Saquon as, okay. So okay. I got you. He wants.
Listen, whatever best player is, let's celebrate that. Okay. Let's celebrate best player. Couldn't care less who's the best player on a terrible supporting cast.
Bro Chacho Jackson. This is silly. It's a consolation prize based on semantics. Are we going to argue that the Eagles aren't the most valuable team as well as the best? Eileen Nolan.
He could defend against Lamar better than Josh.
Brian Brown. I feel like Acho and others punished the Ravens organization for drafting, signing, and developing players, but said Josh did things that hasn't been done. LOL. Asmodeus showing you some love.
Sarah, you're the GOAT, and I'm not. You are the voice of the people. Now that I do try.
Bro Chacho, another one. The debate is ridiculous. Is anyone going to seriously argue semantics between the Eagles being the best team this year versus the most valuable? No.
Nobody cares.
Nikita.
Sarah, you're a class act. The other side clown. I don't think he was a clown, and I thought he was good here. I disagreed with him clearly, but I don't think he was a clown. But you can have your opinion for sure.
So far from it, and I thought it was cool. A bunch of people picked up on this in the chat. He was normal voice. When you hear him on the show, he has a very much a TV type personality, TV type of cadence, TV type of demeanor.
Which he admitted to, by the way.
Oh yeah, he was just chilling with us.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just conversation, which I always appreciate. Thor says Chef Sarah's cooking. Acho's okay. He says you're cooking Acho's bacon. It was epic. Hashtag MV pity and 12K Tay.
Did he not say Allen did things that haven't been done before, and that's why he voted for Allen? But when you said Lamar, he switched. Flock Acho.
I definitely got a process. I'd never heard this before. I think he maybe had said it before on a show, and maybe my memory's not being jogged, but I definitely have to process his thought on, and the way that his analogy was like, he referenced Russell Westbrook doing historical things, right?
Yeah.
And he referenced Lamar doing historical things, and that not necessarily leading to value. I got to process that, because when it's
How's
never
that
been
not
done
valuable?
before, yeah, I have to.
How
I
is
have to
40
really
plus touchdowns and 4 interceptions not valuable?
How is transformative not valued? That's what I kind of have to process.
Yeah.
Because
there's no processing it. That's the point.
it's like,
It's
but I'm just trying to think through it, and
we're
maybe that's
outthinking the room.
Well, and then maybe it gets down the road of overthinking, and then you just get yourself in trouble, because if it's never been done before, my gosh, that seems mighty valuable, mighty transformative, mighty historical. But that brings us to the end of our super chats. We got to get in some patrons as well. This will be, by the way, a separate video in our best of archive section on the vault. So please be on the lookout for that, especially if you tuned in late or whatever. It will be up in full coming up later this afternoon. We want to say thank you to Dion Coleman and Lisa Mason for the support that they've given us through Patreon as Vault shout-out sponsors of ours. They're a part of the Vault Patreon community, and it's a great time to join that community if you're interested in doing so to kickstart this offseason. Dion, Lisa, thank you both for believing in what we're building. And if you guys are interested in doing the same, you can visit patreon.com/RavensVault podcast. Well, partner, great get. Really enjoyed that. Hope you did as well. And man, your track record when it comes to guest booking, I think is cannot be questioned. Cannot and will not
I've
be
been
questioned.
getting lucky, Bobby. It's luck. Luck is all it is.
I don't know about that. Listen, if I know you the way I think I do, you would never say that's luck.
Well, no, like when you consistently get it done, and then I just come in here and there with some random ones. It's not necessarily.
What did I tell you prior? I said, listen, you may not. I've said it before. You may not have me in volume, but man, you are breathing down my neck in quality. You really are. So well done.
You guys, where did you get Kurt Warner?
It's a good
big names.
We got good competition, right? It breeds excellence. So let's keep doing. Let's see what else we can do. I thought about bringing maybe we bring on Mark Ingram to kickstart the offseason, and see what he's up to. So there's a lot that we can do. And I'll tell you this, coming off Radio Row, just like last year, you just don't know what kind of dividends will be, you just don't know when things are going to go full circle for you. It's not always short-term gain coming off those experiences. It's sometimes, like you just said, we don't get Kurt on week 1 without that. I know I mentioned that last week, but anyway, I might be going to the NFL Combine this year. So maybe more opportunities to come in Indianapolis in the coming weeks. So anyway, we appreciate Emmanuel Acho for being today's featured guest. We appreciate all of you for dropping by and joining us. There's over 3,000 concurrents right now, Tila. We thought you might like to know that. And we want to say thank you to Manta Sleep for the continued support that they give us as one of our brand sponsors. So for Sarah Ellison, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Wednesday Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. It was a great one. Hopefully it was a memorable and enjoyable one for you. Please like the video on your way out, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when we're dropping our content. All 3 of those things are free and they go a long way. So we appreciate you. We'll be back in under 23 hours from right now. And as always, thanks for joining us here inside the vault. We'll talk soon.